also that he was going to talk about the topic that he was going to talk about, which is Islamic humanism, and so much of what we are concerned with is to do with recent history, contemporary politics, and so forth. And it's really great delight to hear about things which we don't normally hear about. Dr. Poonawalla did his first degree in Bombay, went to study Arabic in Cairo, and then went to UCLA, where he got his PhD in 1968. Then he taught at McGill and Harvard before going back to UCLA in 1974, and he's been there ever since. I think he's just retired. And he is a specialist in Ismaili studies, but has also written on Quran, tafsir, and so on. He has 11 books and a large number of articles. And although I very much doubt whether Dr. Poonawalla knows this, many, many years ago, I was asked to proofread a text of a translation that Dr. Poonawalla had made. And in the E.J.W. Gibb Memorial Series, I cannot remember the name of the text, but anyway, there was this passage about, some sort of little twig which was used as a toothbrush. And Marion, my first wife, thought this was so delightful because there was about half a page on the excellence of this twig and this usefulness of the toothbrush and so forth.
The miswak, right?
Miswak. Miswak, yes. Anyway, it was a real pleasure to read this manuscript. I must say, I know nothing about the topic, but it was great. The story of the toothbrush remained some sort of, one of those sort of family things that came up every so often afterwards. Well, Dr. Poonawalla has written
there was a case,
yes.
I think the Prophet that he used to carry 2 or 3 things always when he was traveling. One was this miswak always, another, I think, bottle of perfume.
Yes. Well, I certainly carry the toothbrush. It's not exactly the perfume, I suppose. Some sort of aftershave is what the problem. So I'm glad to hear that. Yeah. So, Dr. Poonawalla has written, was the term humanism a product of the Greco-Roman ideal of humanitas, or does every high culture produce this phenomenon in its own way? Cultural historians are divided on this issue. However, a significant number of scholars, both Eastern and Western, have argued that humanism was a feature of Arab Islamic civilization and that Greek culture was not unique in creating the humanistic ideal. Taking this as a point of departure, this paper argues that humanism was a common spirit that encapsulated the entire Mediterranean world during the Middle Ages. Next, it defines humanism as a doctrine, a set of attitudes, or a way of life centered upon human values. Having described the primary features of humanism to illustrate Islamic humanism, a well-known encyclopedia of the philosophical sciences entitled Rasail Ikhwan Safa has been selected. Ikhwan Safa, the Brethren of Purity, is a pseudonym assumed by the authors who describe themselves as a group of fellow seekers after truth. The epistles occupy a unique position in the history of Islamic thought and exercised a great influence on the Muslim elite. The existence of a large number of manuscript copies of the text scattered throughout the Muslim world is an eloquent witness to their popularity and impact.
Well, thank you very much, Professor Peter Slulek, for your kind words. And before I start, I would like to extend my thanks to this institute and especially Dr. Sharifa. If I may distort some of the middle or the last name, I think it would be more appropriate for me to read in the Idafa, Nurul Huda, not Nur Huda. That makes better sense, yeah, Nurul Huda. And then again, tracing your genealogy all the way back to the Sufi or the mystic, the Middle Ages, famous Al-Junayd. So thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to stop by on my way to India. And I think Professor Sloglet almost summarized, I think, the contents of the paper, so I'm not going like the, what you call the humorous figure, the, what you call in Arabic, the, sometimes my doesn't work. I think that I'm going to close the book and say that, well, meaning those who know, let them inform those who do not know, and then we leave the platform. So I'm not going to do that, but then I think, let me, as he said, already summarize, so won't go into the preliminary things, that the scholars are divided whether this concept belongs to the Greco-Roman culture or does it belong to, and I have already, I think, specified that number of Western as well as Eastern scholars have written about it. First among them, the famous Egyptian scholar who has done a lot of work on the philosophy in the last century, Abdul Rahman Badawi, also was the first one, then the Muhammad Arkoon, then I think the numerous works of George Makdisi has proved that definitely humanism was part and parcel of the Islamic civilization. It was not just merely a monopoly of the ancient Greece or of the later, I think, the European things. And I think lately, as I was reading, I would like to add, especially the who passed away a few years ago, the famous French thinker Michel Foucault, and in his work entitled What is Enlightenment, he has also contrasted the two terms, enlightenment versus humanism, and said that very many scholars confuse these two words, what have different, so to say, the connotation, and he adds that humanism should not be confused with enlightenment. The latter is an event or set of events and complex historical process that is located at a certain point in the development of European societies, that is the Enlightenment. As such, it includes elements of social transformation, types of political institutions, forms of knowledge, projects of rationalization of knowledge and practices, etc. It has been at the basis of an entire form of philosophical reflection, and especially concerns only the modes of reflective relation to the present, that how we are becoming more and more conscious of the present and how we critique not only the present but also the past. So the humanism, then he contrasts, is somewhat different, that this humanism is a theme, or rather a set of themes that have reappeared on several occasions over time after the fall of the Greco-Roman Empire, even in the European societies. And these themes always tied to value judgment. This is, I think, what he says is important, and have obviously varied greatly in the contents as well as the values they have preserved. Then, going through the Western history, he says that in the 17th century, there was a humanism that presented itself as a critique of Christianity. of or of religion in general. Then in the 19th century there was a suspicious humanism. He calls it suspicious humanism because of the rise of the scientific knowledge and sciences, which this humanism or suspicious humanism was hostile and critical towards science, meaning where this would lead. And another at the same time, humanism, there to be contrary, placed its hope in that same science. So you see the contradiction. From this, he concludes that one cannot conclude that everything that has been linked with humanism is to be rejected, but that the theme itself is too supple, too diverse, too inconsistent to serve as an axis for reflection. It is not that thing. So let me now, I think, go more or less to the heart of the problem, and there I think two things need some clarification. First is the Ismailism. What is Ismailism? I won't go into the details because I have written a lot and it is one of the major area of research. It's a branch of Shiism, and generally it is, you could say that the division took place after the death of Jafar al-Sadiq into the Ismailism and the Twelvers or Imanism. So leaving aside the Imanism, and then it ends with the occultation of the 12th Imam in 260 of the Hijrah, or 864, something like that, or 874, if I remember correctly. The Ismailism, that Jafar al-Sadiq, Ismail, his son, was appointed as his successor. Unfortunately, he passed away during his lifetime. And so some groups of Shia even deserted Jafar al-Sadiq, saying that, how come is an Imam? You should know. You should not have appointed the son who was not going to survive you as your successor. And so they left his fold. And then there was a question of what you call claiming of succession. And Ismail had a son called Muhammad bin Ismail. He was in his probably teens, he might be 18 or 19, and he was older than the other, so to say, the son of Jafar al-Sadiq by a slave woman called Musa al-Kazim, anyhow, without going into the details. So Muhammad claimed that it was his right, being that his father was appointed as the leader or the successor, so he succeeds his father. Given the situation, and again in one of my articles I pointed out that the situation was very delicate. This was the time of the Abbasid Caliph al-Mansur, where Jafar al-Sadiq himself was summoned to Baghdad for questioning twice. So in that, my paper, I raised the issue that I have my doubts whether Jafar al-Sadiq claimed as the Shi'i later on projected the meaning of Imam. Imam might be just a leader, not in the Shi'i sense of real spiritual authority or that leader. I have my doubts that he would have claimed given the circumstances. So looks like that his grandson Muhammad bin Ismail went into occultation, and again there's a different history, almost a gap of 100 years before the Fatimids re-emerged on the Islamic history in the middle of the 3rd century, and that is immediately after the disappearance of the 12th Imam, meaning after 260, and they claim that the Mahdi is going to, so to say, make its zuhur immediately. and that is the high time of the Fatimid or the Ismaili propaganda. Without going into it, and this led, I think, the movement was very, very powerful. And another thing, what I would like to note here, that they had developed a whole set of doctrinal system which supported this whole theory. And by this time, they had, I think, among the Muslims living aside the Mu'tazilites, they had absorbed the Greek philosophical heritage, and a number of scholars, I myself is also more inclined, I've written a lot of things about the Ikhwan Mustafa, I'm inclined that probably this is a product of pre-Fatimid period, meaning before the establishment of the Fatimid dynasty. Might be this was used as a manifesto, because there are a number of things, unless you have questions, you can go and argue. So I think probably the Ikhwan Mustafa, it is more or less agreed upon now that it has to do with the Ismaili movement. Which group of Ismaili? Because it was a heterogeneous, very many groups, I think, joined together to supplant the Abbasid dynasty. So that's another issue. But so this is the product probably of the towards the end of the 3rd century, and I would place Rasal Ikhwan Mustafa as post-Kindi, meaning Kindi died in about 258 or 260, but we find it all the elements of the Kindi school there, and the Ikhwan Mustafa are before the Ibn Sina, pre-Farabi. Farabi died in 340, and definitely Farabi we find the 10 intellects, it's a modification which we don't see in the Ikhwan Mustafa. So this is a convenient point to put it, meaning the time period where the Ikhwan Mustafa could be placed. So leaving that, I think to examine the humanism, I have gone over and I have picked up, I think, at least 5 major topics, because Ikhwan, it's a 4 volumes plus 2 additional volumes of summation, so it's not easy. One cannot find everything at one place. Like the Quran, everything is scattered. So I have collected the evidences scattered throughout the 4 major volumes of Ikhwan Mustafa under 5 headings, which are conveniently, I think, what I would say correspond to the humanism. So the first is the, let me here, I think, begin with, okay. So already we already went over this. Sorry, okay, it is not. Isn't it this way? Oh, to the, oh, sorry. Oh, sorry, okay, this I cannot see something. Okay. Okay. So I have already given you this thing. And I think it was but this is the 2 books about the rise of the madrasas, I think also has well documented. So this is the thing. I think Kramer also has, and those who have studied, I think that especially the Jewish scholars who discovered the Islam in the 19th and 20th century, they were quite different than the so-called Orientalists, the Christian Orientalists, because they considered that Islam is not different than the Western civilization. Okay, and then there is a right, Levitt and Abida. Then I think there is a grammar is devoted to the Umayyan Tawhidi. And okay, so comes here. Meaning, given all these things, I won't go into the details because there's a lot of ground to be covered, so I hope you will excuse me. So, in short, then I think I have put it, what are the primary features of humanism? And these are the 5 main themes I will, so to say, I have devoted in analyzing. First is the mankind's origin and his place in the universe and what is his destiny. This Ikhwan, I think, has elaborated, so I will go into it. Then another feature of humanism is rationalism and its limits. And third, religious tolerance and spirit of inclusiveness. Unfortunately, Muslims have become the most intolerant these days. It's very, very strange. This was not the case, I think, in the medieval period or the early period. And fourth, about the education, which is meaning how to mold the character of the future generation. And here the Ikhwan's goal was providing a well-rounded education, as was the case with the Greeks. And finally, it's a very novel topic. The Ikhwan's whole intellectual attempt to debate not only the inherent tension generated by the anthropocentric view projected in heading number 1, that mankind's origin, meaning that God created Adam, so we are from one parents, and with all our minor differences, meaning Judaism, Christianity, Islam, and other things. But it raises the ethical issues also, then why human beings in the name of religion are fighting. And so Ikhwan were the first one to tackle this tension between this view. Yeah? And also they offer a provisional resolution of this dilemma. It's not permanent, and this is again tied to the Ismaili belief system, that they believe in the cyclical history, that history proceeds in cycle. It is called an Arabic Dawr Adwar, and in that way. So I think that the latter theme is unique to the history of religious thought in general and Islamic thought in particular. So let's begin with the mankind's origin, his place in the universe, and his destiny. I think I still have about 20 minutes.
Oh, as long as you're not.
Okay, but some other things might take more time, so 30 minutes. Okay. So let me, in that way, meaning give the general idea. Here their thinking is very close to the Plotinus. He was a philosopher born in Egypt, but wrote in Greek and especially Enneads, and these were translated into Arabic and went under the pseudo, so to say, the name as the Aristotle's theology. And Arabs for a while, I think, were unable to differentiate whether this is, so to say, the Aristotle's theology or something different. But this is what is called Neoplatonism, and Neoplatonism has number of features, and so that's why it became very attractive not only to Christianity but also to Islam. So this is the thing. And so what the Plotinus said, then again it's a very ambiguous term, ambiguous sentence. I'm trying to bring back the divine in us. So the Armstrong, who is, I think, major, so to say, person or scholar to explicate the theory meaning all this doctrine of the Plotinus, he says that what Plotinus was saying is that but if we come to understand this is a little later, but let me read it here. If we come to understand as precisely as possible what Plotinus meant by that thing that I'm trying to bring back divine in us, he meant that we shall be well on the way to understanding this philosophy as a whole. Man for Plotinus is in some sense divine. Again, the same sense with all the religions, right? That man is divine. And the object of philosophical life is to understand this divinity and restore its proper relationship, never, as we shall see, completely lost with the divine all. In that all, to come to union with the transcendent source, the one. This is how, again, that man, the God created man in his image, as the Bible and number of. So the same thing Islam holds, that man is the cream of creation, and that's why man controls not only the general nature but also the animals and other lower beings. So in that way, what is the destiny? And again, is the very much also to the Quran and the Neoplatonism, according to the Neoplatonism, is that if man finds out its origin, reflects about oneself, meaning what is the origin of the soul, then again that process of downward which began with, so to say, the creation, it, so to say, reverses and man progresses, especially the soul, higher and higher, and until it reaches, so to say, higher stages, and then gets united with the first intellect or the al-aql, because again, Ikhwan Safa, as the followers of Islam, they strive to keep that God is transcendental. You cannot, meaning human soul cannot go back to the divine soul. No, that is different. It goes back only to the intellect or the universal intellect. That's it. That's it. So there is a break. And again, the Ismailis or the Ikhwan Safa put the break, because this is the reason the Neoplatonic, let me give you digress a little bit. In the Greek philosophy, there is no break between, or what I would say, total break. There is no connecting link between the realm of, so to say, ideal and the physical world. It is cut off. So the Plotinus in the 3rd century, he tried to bridge that gap, and he, because of his reflective or speculative philosophy, he tried to introduce and put God is transcendent, but then God is super abundantly, so to say, good, charitable, everything, something flows out of it. And the example he gives, like the light and the heat emanating from sun. Sun cannot stop it. So this is like God is super abundant, so something flows out of it, and that is the first intellect. And again, that is also super abundant, so the universal soul flows from it, and from there comes the Hayula or the universal matter and number of other things, and this is how the physical world generates. So you see it, but in that way, with the Neoplatonism or the Plotinus, still this is connected. They claim that God is transcendent, but still there is no proper, so to say, cut-off. But because of Islam, and also the same thing, Mu'tazila, Ismailis, they try to cut off and say that no, there is no relation. Human intellect can think only up to the first intellect. Human being cannot, or human intellect cannot transgress, cannot go beyond. So in that way, God is unthinkable. So this is how they keep it, and they try to, so to say, explain it. So this is without going into much detail. Then comes, I think, yeah, see, it is the same thing, what they say. Oh brother, that your soul is potentially an angel, and that can become one in actuality if you follow the path of the prophets and those who were responsible for the promulgations of the divine laws, and act in accordance with their counsels mentioned in their books, which are obligatory in the usages of their laws. Indeed, your soul is also potentially a devil, meaning instead of rising up, it can go down too. And will one day actually become a devil if you follow the path of the wicked and the infidels. So this is the difference, and this is the Ikhwan or the Ismailis call it, that man is in the, what you call, in the Al-Qama Al-Alafiyya, meaning like the Alif straight path. If one recognizes its origin, accepts the Prophet's missions and other things, then it goes up. Otherwise, it goes down. So, then I think coming to the rationalism, again, I think I would not like to go much detail. Mohsin Mehdi, I think, in his book, The Political Philosophy, has also explained. And here, let me, without reading, try to explain that Farabi was the first one who followed the Platonic, what I would say, politics, did not follow Aristotle. And with the Aristotle, the highest thing is what you call the metaphysics, yeah, beyond, so to say, this world. This is where it is. And for that, in other words, what one can call that God is like a thinking mind in the thought of Aristotle, but thinking about itself. And this is where also Ghazali took him to task, that well thinking about himself, meaning he doesn't care for the human beings or other what is happening in the world, because he knows everything in general, doesn't have any particular knowledge. So here Farabi, like Ikhwan, they try to reorganize the whole, what you call the educational curriculum, and there with Farabi and Ikhwan Safa, very close, probably has some common, so to say, the source. Metaphysics is not the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal, the highest, is the politics. And again, politics, like Ikhwan, Farabi also divides in number of ways: higher politics, meaning the prophetic politics, kingly politics, then family politics, how one has to rule the or manage the family, and then personal, how one person has to manage about his own life, about his soul and actions and other things. So this is the thing, and there is very close affinity that Ikhwan also give about at least 12 the highest, so to say, description what is needed in the ideal ruler. And like Farabi or like Plato, if the ideal ruler is not a thinker, is not a philosopher, at least he should have his advisor as a thinker, as a philosopher. Otherwise, that regime is doomed to perish, cannot survive, because one cannot manage. So this is, I think, in gist, without going into much details, because otherwise the paper is already in the what we call final page proofs, and it is almost 100 pages long. So to read it and explain, I think it will take couple of hours. So I will skip it. Then so the prophethood follows the rank of the angels and the highest status. You see it how they also develop the Islamic theology. That prophet, or he is a philosopher king. The philosophers, they have to use the syllogism and they think that to develop the reasoning power to such an extent that they can, so to say, deal with the abstract. The prophet, they have a very powerful imagination. They don't have to go through A is B, B is C, that's why A is C. No, they can immediately, so to say, predict that thing. And this is the same thing with Farabi as also with Ibn Sina. If you read their theory of what we call prophecy, it's very close. So Islamic thinkers in point more than 1,000 years ago, they developed all these things, rational thinking and all these things, what I think now the men of 20th or 21st century try to understand religion in rational terms. This occurred in Islam much earlier, but unfortunately after that some kind of decline, and this I think has, so to say, lost the, what I would say, the Muslims have lost the touch with what is happening with sciences, and like the present Wahhabi or the other thought, the Sharia, I have to say to the Muslims, where was in Islamic history, there was an Islamic government where the Sharia was implemented. I would say not even the days of the Orthodox Caliphate. Forget about it. As soon as the Prophet closed his eyes, that was the end of it. If someone wants to argue, we can argue, but see, these things you cannot say to the modern Muslims. The aim is, so to say, to have the Sharia state. My goodness, this never existed. So what are you talking about it? And number of other things. So leaving aside, as I said, that Muslims unfortunately have become the most intolerant these days. If they try to study back their project, the history, I think they should know what was happening and how rich Islamic civilization was. So leaving that about the rationalism, again, I think I will not go into the detail because the last section is much more interesting and very novel. Okay, you would appreciate. So rationalism, like the rationalism of Mu'tazilites, yes, it has its limit, but Shiism and Ismailism try to encourage scientific thinking and rationalism as long as you do not touch the figure of the Imam, the head of the state. That's it. But otherwise, they presented religion in a very rational terms. Then comes, I think, religious tolerance, right? And the spirit of inclusiveness. Yes, Islam, the Ikhwan embraces all, whether he's a Jew or a Christian or a Hindu, doesn't matter. Yeah. Everybody is welcome, and they emphasize the Quranic teaching of, so to say, inclusiveness and also of tolerance. I don't have the time, but for them, Quran is not only the source as for Muslims these days has become. They are well versed, the Ikhwan, with the Old as well as the New Testament, and they left and right quote not only the Quran but from the Old as well as the New Testament to prove this, that man is, so to say, as the Quran, what you call the gist of the Quranic teaching is man, irrespective of color or anything, man is one. Yeah, meaning Arab doesn't have any superiority over non-Arabs. So this type of thing. And I have another section in which they quote freely from also the Iranian literature, because Iranian literature is very, I would say, prolific in sayings, especially kingly tales and how the king has to govern the Ra'iyya, and also they take number of, I would say, stories from Buddhism, as well as from Hinduism, where they try to trace that man's origin is one, yeah, doesn't differentiate. And in that way, let me point out, unfortunately, I don't have the reference, but there are 3 verses, 3 places in the Quran, and this is where I think I give credit to Quran. It says that in translation that if you believe in God, if you believe in the day of judgment, and if you do good acts, whether you are a Muslim or a Jew or a Christian, you should not be afraid of what reward you will get. What does it mean? I think Muslims have totally forgotten this. It occurs 3, so to say, places. So in that way, that meaning that if they act righteously, if they believe in God, day of the judgment, nothing to fear, whether they are Jews, Christians, whatever it is. What it means? It means that Islam, or I think one has to give the credit, the Quran doesn't hold that as a Muslim they have a monopoly for going to paradise. It is unfortunate. Unfortunately, this is the thing these days, as if Muslims have taken the monopoly. Well, number of other religions, meaning extremism these days, is common in Judaism, as you see, in occupied territories, in extreme Hinduism, the fundamentalist Christians, and how they are, so to say, impacting the government policies in America. So it's a altogether different story. So this is what I think and look at some of the, I don't have time to bring out, but look some of the quotations. They say, "Oh, our brethren ought to show no enmity towards any science, nor shun any book, nor cling fanatically to any single creed. For our own creed encompasses all other creeds and comprehends all sciences. This creed is the consideration of everything in existence, both sensible and intelligible, from beginning to end, whether covert or hidden, manifest or concealed, with a view to discovering the source of reality insofar as each and every one of them are derived from a single principle, single cause, a single word, and a single soul. Organization of knowledge, I already hinted, so just briefly go over some of the slides. So importance of knowledge in Neoplatonism is, it is the, what you call the salvation of soul, depends not only the virtuous act, but also knowledge. Knowledge of the soul, what's your origin, and the meaning of God, what does it mean, the supreme power, the supreme authority. And in that way, the like Farabi, Ikhwan also bring together, I think, three different, so to say, the sciences, al-ulum al-Arabiya, meaning all the grammatical or linguistic sciences, because Arabic was an important thing. So one has to first have the mastery over the Arabic language. That is the fundamental, so to say, the training should take place. Then al-ulum al-Shar'iyya, meaning the Quran, the tafsir, hadith, fiqh, all other things. But then it is al-ulum al-falsafiyya, or what is called al-ulum al-aqliyya, with the Mu'tazila. And this is what I think I was explaining to our brother, I think a few minutes ago, that the one of the main reasons, as Fazlur Rahman has pointed out, is the starvation of the religious sciences in the medieval period. They were totally cut off from philosophical sciences. So there was no interaction, and this is the thing. And then another main drawback of Islamic knowledge in the later centuries was, how to sum up, let me try to recollect, that knowledge Muslims consider you can find it either from a teacher or from a book. Meaning whatever your teacher says, it is like the divine word, right? You cannot criticize. Or whatever you find in the Quran or whatever other books like that. No, I think this was the major shortcoming in the later period, because this notion of knowledge gives very, what I would say, negative role to the human intellect. Our modern knowledge is human intellect has to take an active role. Knowledge is not given by a teacher. Yes, whatever I say, you don't have to accept. I might be lying or I might be false. And the same thing, it is not to be found totally in the book. You have to use your brain. You have to use one's reason which God has given. And again, the Quran hundreds of times emphasizes, so to say, that we have given you reason. Don't you understand? Don't you reflect? So I think this is another aspect. So they advocated comprehensive humanist education at three levels: primary, intermediate, and advanced. Primary, the purpose was to provide the basis in the fundamentals of reading, writing, grammar, poetry, history, and other essential arts to achieve mastery of the Arabic language. Intermediate, to impart proper religious instructions of various disciplines such as Quranic exegesis and hermeneutics, what is called Ta'wil, Sharia, and other things. And advanced, the highest level was for the philosophical sciences. And that's where I think they come in. Their 4 volumes were meant for the advanced philosophical sciences, designated by 51 epistles, which are arranged again in 4 progressive categories. Begins with arithmetic, again music is included. Okay, Islam is not against totally music. This is a common, I think, fallacy. So let me, after that, meaning how the 4 volumes are mathematical, philosophical sciences. They consist of 13 epistles. Then physical and natural sciences containing 17 epistles, spiritual, intellectual sciences pertaining to 10, and last highest is juridical, divine sciences consisting of 11. You can find it, and then let me also repeat that few years ago, I proposed to the Institute of Ismaili Studies, and they accepted my proposal that unfortunately we do not have in Arabic a critical edition of the text. What we have first is the Bombay edition. It is also not a critical edition. Cairo edition is probably, I would put it, pirated edition with little improvement from the Bombay. And Beirut edition also doesn't say anything, but looks like also it is a pirated from Cairo edition with little improvement. So this is the situation. So I suggested, and we have undertaken a critical edition of the Rasal Ikhwan al-Safa. We have collected over 100 manuscripts. About 18 or 19 are complete copies of 4 volumes. And that is, I think, we have distributed to various scholars. And they are also being translated and annotated in English. Almost, I think, 8, 9 or 10 volumes are already published by the Institute as well in cooperation with the Oxford University Press. And the remaining will be completed in the coming 2 years. So this is the knowledge is very important, and this is also prophetic hadith said, لو كان العلم يعني في الصين لازم واحد يسافر. I think this we can replace it now. لو كان في أمريكا لازم واحد يروح أمريكا. Okay. Now, coming to the last issue, which is again very unique to the Ikhwan al-Safa. And this is how Ikhwan al-Safa became known in the West, and in the 18th century. This first, it is one of the largest epistles, was translated in India, first in Urdu, and from Urdu into English and all other things. But in the medieval period, first it was translated from Arabic into Hebrew, and from Hebrew into other languages, but then that was forgotten. So this is the thing, what is the crux of the problem is that man is the cream of creation. But why man misbehaved as we see it in the 21st century, all the wars and other things. So what is the problem? So here they touch really, it's a dilemma, but they do not refuse, they do not shy away. They say that let's tackle the issue. And so it is tackled in a very nice way because all these things were known. So they use the language of the animals and birds in order not to hurt the human beings. And this was known from the Indian fables translated by Ibn al-Muqaffa, Kalila wa Dimna. So this is how it is put, that about 70 odd men traveling, big businessmen, might be millionaire, and because of the storm, well, the ship was shipwrecked and they landed on an island. It was a very fertile island with fruits, vegetables, might be like Singapore or like one of the Hawaii, what I would say, the island, I think probably the Hawaii or garden state, all these things are nice animals. So human beings somehow or the other settle there, forget about going back, so nice. So they reap, I think, benefits of the fruits, other things, cultivated. Birds and animals, some of the animals, they try to tame and I think bring them under their control. Some other wild animals they were not controlled, finding difficult, so they were chased away or they chased them and so they took shelter in the caves or mountains or the forest. So allegorically the story, I'm not going to read unless there are a few passages that I will see. So this is how the background is set. So the animals who were, I would say, overburdened, like donkeys and other things, beating them and also using foul language if they don't walk properly or carry burden and other things. Then others, animals who escape. So they said, what to do with these human beings? They are not only destroying the environment, see, they were environmental conscious more than 1400 years ago, that human beings have destroyed the natural environments. Air is polluted, the earth is being, so to say, destroyed in different ways by what you call mining and a number of other things. So all these problems come in. So they said what to, so they have said it not to offend anybody, but in a sense it is a real critique of the Muslim society, whether it is in that society was a Muslim, a Christian or a Jew or a Sabian, they will come under criticism. So the animal they thought of and they try to, in a democratic way, elect representative of the birds, of the sea mammals, sea animals, wild animals, other animals. It's nicely represented, and they launched a complaint or filed what you call suit against man. Again, in the court, it is called just king of the genie, imaginary. Yeah. So the genie master or the king who controlled that thing, he served the summons to the human being that, well, there is a complaint against you. You can't escape. You have to come to my court and answer all the charges. And again, in the court, composed genie, there are some philosophers, there are some critics and everything. It's nicely placed. You have to, it is already available in English translation and annotation, the new edition with the critical, you can read it, it's a thick volume. So they are summoned, and one by one, the witnesses are called, and they complain, and the men, so to say, also representing by a Jew, by a Christian, by a Hindu, by a Sabian, by a Hijazi, by an Iranian, by a Hindu, Indian, meaning again representing wisdom and other things like the Greek and other things. And the animals, they, what I would say, they tear down the man's argument word by word. They were unable to answer. So the final recourse is, it's a very nice way. Let me try to pick up. And the men try to boast, oh well, we have been given, they cite the Quranic verses, the Bible, that we have created you in the image of God. So the animals, they are also subservient to us. You say that no, this is nonsense. This is not, so to say, does not mean that we have to be subservient. We have been, all of us are created in certain way. Yeah, so here they aside one person, a descendant of the Prophet's uncle Abbas, replied that he had religious and rational proofs to corroborate his claim that you animals have to be subservient to us, and presented several verses from the Quran. One of them I will recite here, and quote, "And he creates cattle, you derive warmth from them and various other uses, and from them you obtain food, and you find beauty in them when you drive them home in the evenings and when you take them out to pasture in the morning. And they carry your loads to many a place which otherwise you would be unable to reach without great hardship to yourself. And it is He who creates horses and mules and asses for you to ride," in the Quran, as well as for their beauty. So this is the evidence human beings, especially from the progeny of the Prophet, cites. Okay? The spokesman of the animal, a mule, very much abused by the men, mule refuted the human's assertion by stating that there was nothing in those verses that supported their claim. Those verses, the mule asserted, merely indicate that God granted kindness and blessings to mankind, citing a verse from the Quran, "And He has made the sun and the moon, both of them constant upon their horses, subservient to His laws, so that they be of use to you." The mule exclaimed rhetorically, "Do the children of Adam think that they too, that is the sun and the moon, are their slaves and chattels, and that they are their masters?" The mule continued by addressing the genie king, "Your Majesty, God created all His creatures in heaven and earth so that some will serve others, either to promote some good or to forbid some evil. God's subordination of animals to the children of Adam is solely meant to assist them, not as they dupe themselves into believing and falsely claiming that they are our masters and we are their slaves." So the spokesman of the humans simply reiterated his position. Hence the king intervened, and addressing the human, he said, "Only claims which are grounded in definite proof are acceptable before this court. What proof, O human beings, have you for your claims?" So the spokesman for the humans replied, "We have rational proofs and philosophical arguments. Our beautiful form, the erect construction of our bodies, our keen senses and subtlety of our discrimination, our keen insight and superior intellect all demonstrate that we are the masters and they are the slaves." The animal spokesman snapped back, "God wisely ordained that human form is better for humans and ours is for us. Since God created Adam and his children naked, omit certain things, and gave them fruit from trees as their food and leaves of trees for their clothing, He made humans to stand erect so it would be easy for them to reach the fruit and leaves. By the same token, since God gave us the grass on the ground for our food, He made us face downward so it would be easy for us to reach it. This, not what the children of Adam allege, is the reason God made them erect and us bent downward." And it goes on and on. Finally, So if man is the cream of creation and all these things, well, so what is the problem? It is, I think, very much, let me pick up from some points. So at this point, the Nightingale stood up and rejoined, yes, it is true, O human, but also state the balance of the promise when they are arguing about that one day we will be answerable to God. So, O humans, you are also promised the torment of, meaning they say that we are promised the what you call heavens and houris and all other things. So this Nightingale says, O human, you are also promised not only of Jannah and the houris, but the torment of the grave, the interrogation by Munkar and Nakir, the terrors of reckoning day, the rigorous accounting, the threat of entry into the scorching flames of Gehenna, the drinking of foul water, and the eating from the tree of the Qum, hot as molten lava. Every promise of the Quran is followed by a threat. All this is for you, human beings, while we are excluded from it. Just as we are promised no reward, we face no threat of punishment. We are content with our Lord's judgment in our case, neither of us nor against us. The evidence between us and you, O human, is therefore balanced. Our fates are equal, so what is the matter with you, O human, and all this boasting? The Hijazi demanded, how are we equal? When in either case the punishment or reward, we survive forever. See, again, this is another myth. We survive forever and ever. If we obey, we are with the prophets, with awliya Allah, the imams and the awsiya, sages and virtuous and the righteous, who resemble the angels. And even if we are condemned to punishment, still we will be rescued by the intercession of our prophet. See how men argue. At that time, the leaders of the animals and the genie sages all proclaimed, now at last, O humans, you have spoken the truth. Indeed, the examples you have given are something to boast about and something to strive for, because you will live forever. Right? But tell us, O community of humans, about the characteristics of those virtuous people and their way of life, if you are truthful, and state those things if you have knowledge thereof. Who are these prophets and awliya Allah? Just then the entire gathering of humans fell silent, reflecting over what they had been asked. No one had the answer. Finally, a learned, experienced, a man of intelligence, culture, refinement, and insight, you see all these adjectives, who was Persian by birth and upbringing, Muslim by faith, Hanafi in ideology, Iraqi in culture, Hebrew in lore, Christian in manner, Damascene in piety, Greek in sciences, Indian in insight, Sufi in conduct, angelic in character, and divine in thought, said, after all this, O just King of the jinn and the community that has gathered together, know that those who are the friends of God, awliya Allah, are the choicest of His creation and the best of His servants. They have praiseworthy characters, pious acts, diverse learning, noble attributes, knowledge pertaining to God, angelic traits, holy and just conduct, and wondrous ways, which our tongues are weary to describe, and no account can do justice to enumerate their ways of life and the virtues of their character. Then, addressing the just king of the jinn, the spokesman The spokesperson continued, what does your majesty command with respect to these human strangers and animals? So the king of the jinni delivered his judgment that the animals must be subject to the commands and prohibitions of the humans and serve them until the beginning of the new epoch. See, they are playing on the adwa, the cyclical cycle of history. It is worthy to note that in the Atif Afandi, the oldest extant manuscript transcribed in 578 or 1182, and the two other older manuscripts, Asad Afandi, the dispute ends without the judgment. So judgment is suspended. I would like to conclude that in the Neoplatonic cosmology of the Ikhwan, humans are at the top of sublunary scheme and even better than some of the angels. According to the revealed scriptures, humans are the culmination of creation and God's vicegerents on earth. Despite this lofty station and privilege is not absolute, because the humans are endowed with reason and responsibility. They are subject to the special graces of intercession and redemption. The Ikhwan assert that all human dynasties and empires rise and fall in accordance with God's decrees, and that the concepts of adwar and akwar, that is the conception of history as one of a series of cycles of prophecy, each cycle followed by gradual decay, leading to a new cycle, are applicable to the entire world. Humanity's hegemony on earth is therefore of limited duration. There are other spheres of life over which mankind has no control. The verdict announced in the Jinni court is merely provisional until the current cycle of history ends. Thank you. I leave the conclusion.